What up, gamers? I'm Jason.
I'm Julie.
And today on Dicing Dragons, we are here for our third episode of What's on Our Table. And this is campaign games that we'll be discussing, inspired by Call to Adventure Epic Origins, which has a campaign element, but is it really a campaign game, Julie?
No.
It's a campaign game light. There is a campaign element. You've got some stuff for the campaign mode.
Yeah, and you can refer back to our video for what we thought about that.
Exactly. But we want to talk about games like Epic Origins and also games that we love that have these big, epic, branching storylines. There's some that just have you fail forward. There's a whole lot of different type of campaign games, and we've played a lot of them. They are our favorite, and unfortunately, we don't quite have the time to play them as much as we'd like at the moment. So this just scratched the itch a little bit, but did have a little bit of disappointment as well.
Didn't scratch the itch for me.
A little bit. I thought it was going to, okay? Like, really tiny, like, kind of like that.
So, what are the ones that really succeed, at least as far as we're concerned? It's funny, I was looking at I see Cthulhu over your head, and it's off camera, but it's over Jason's head. That had a campaign element to it.
Actually, it does not have a campaign element. There is no campaign element, and Death May Die.
It felt like it did more so than this game.
That's because Death May Die is a scenario-based game, and it does a great job of having an internal story in the game. But there is no actual sequence of scenario 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 because of all the mix and match elements.
Okay, well, Aeon's End is like the clear champion when it comes to campaign games.
Actually, no, I'm going to disagree with you on that one because I don't think Aeon's End has a very good campaign mode.
What? Why?
Because Aeon's End doesn't have a lot of differences. In the story, you're going to, if you fail, it says try again. If you don't succeed, it's like try one more time. After that goes just advance through the campaign and through the story. Now it has a lot of cool.
There was a couple of times.
There's no branching paths in Legacy, or there's maybe one or two in Legacy of Gravehold, the most recent one. But in the Expedition games,
because we had an option which way we went, and there was a different scenarios based on the choices.
But very minor compared to other games like Lord of the Rings, Journeys to Middle-earth,
yes.
Descent, 2nd edition even has a lot more stuff. Star Wars, Imperial Assault, Folklore, The Affliction, just name a few. So I'm not the biggest fan of Aeon's End campaign mode. Now, what I would say that I love about Aeon's End campaign mode that I think that you really enjoy is the things that you get when you progress. The customization and the progression element of the campaign mode in Aeon's End might be my favorite.
Well, Lord
as
of
well.
the Ring is definitely our favorite. I mean, we've played hundreds of hours of that one, and we just love the story of it. And there are definite elements to when you fail, and it definitely hits you that way.
Yeah, it takes you on a different path. You can fail the whole campaign. You can, you'll go like this through it, or you might go in a straight line.
Which one was it? What was the name of the game that we went like 4 hours out of our way because we couldn't.
That we got lost?
Yeah.
That's one of the ones that we were really enjoying that we really need to get back to the table, which is Tainted Grail, which has that open world campaign element, and Folklore the Affliction did that very well also, but it was a little more structured, not quite as big of a map as you get with Tainted Grail.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've played a lot of Lord of the Rings, we've played a lot of Descent, we've played a lot of Star Wars.
Imperial Assault, we played a lot of Aeon's End. We've played a fair bit of, when we're talking about competitive campaigns, Thunderstone Quest, which was interesting. And I'd say that Thunderstone Quest falls a little bit more into the realm of Call to Adventure, but it did because it's the same game over and over, but there was a progression element that just made it more enjoyable. You got to keep specific cards from the previous missions, and you got to carry that forward. We do need to play the cooperative version of that campaign.
It's funny you mentioned that, and I'm like, that's one of the ones that fell off, was removed from the RAM. It's just not there anymore.
Well, that's because you were kicking my butt, so it was fully loaded in the RAM, and then it kind of went the other way. She likes to delete that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely like, what we've said before. For me, a good campaign game has to have really good story. I mentioned it not too long ago. if a story isn't really compelling, I just don't care, and then I just want to play the game. But Lord of the Rings, definitely one of the things it does very well is the story is very, very well integrated into the game.
Yeah.
It is basically the game.
And there's so many different choices, from the adventure icons, what you can do, the different paths that you can take, especially in the last campaign that we played. We still haven't played the latest one. It was like, do we go to Rohan? Do we go to Gondor? Do we cross the river? Do we stay in Gondor? Do we stay in Rohan? And you got a lot of interesting choices like that. And that's one of the things that you didn't get in Aeon's End. It was very much, you're going to end up here, this is where the game's taking you, but you get a lot of cool and awesome customization things along the way. And I think that the Aeon's End series does that the best, actually. Especially because you can even go back and be like, okay, this last adventure, we got these cards. This card wasn't very useful, but with this new mage I got, I want to use this card, I want to use this card, and let's build our awesome setup to fight the Nameless.
See, one that was just too epic, I think, of a campaign for me, and maybe it's the way we played it, but it was Folklore. It just felt immense and overwhelming.
And I think that's because of the open world elements. We could have a lot of cool questing and adventures. The other issue was we really messed up our play of the game at the start. We essentially played the game on hard mode. We forgot about some of our base bonus damage, so everything was incredibly difficult and was probably taking about double the amount of time that it should. And then once we figured that out, it was like, oh, we're back to 90-minute play sessions for each chapter. So we'd have these epic play sessions, but we were finally really making progress. Whereas we were having like 3-hour play sessions and barely making any progress.
Yeah, I just remember that being a little overwhelming. But I mean, otherwise, the campaign games, I think, strangely, one of the things that elements I think that we've enjoyed a lot, that a lot of people, I guess it's a little controversial, a lot of people don't like it, is we've really enjoyed the games where we have the iPad as a automa, I guess.
Yeah, I really do like app-based campaign games. Now, I understand a lot of the complaints. What happens if the app isn't updated? What happens if it's not ported over to new software, new hardware? And what can that mean for you in the future? Now, I'm happy to say that Fantasy Flight Games does use Steam, so that does give it a fair bit of longevity because Steam keeps getting updated by Valve, the company that makes it. So a newer laptop, you should be able to play your campaigns on Steam using those versions of the game. I think my favorite is when you get the option to do both, when you can use an app for assistance, or you could play it with just the cards. I also like the fact that with like Descent 2nd Edition, and it's a point for the game above the new Descent, although I think the new Descent use of the app really makes it video game-like in terms of what it can calculate, which is really cool. But you do get the one versus many option in Descent 2nd Edition, so that means that if ever something bad happens to the app, we can still play the game. And I really do like that, and I think that's my favorite. But we also want more meat to the campaign. We don't really want stuff that we get in Call to Adventure, which is play the game and nothing carries over. And that's what we're talking about.
Because it carry over.
There is no carryover, really. There's just kind of these cool stories. If you're into the story element of Call to Adventure, I think you can use this campaign mode to cap this tell these epic generational stories, and using this game almost as a framework. Might even let you write a novel or a series of novels, because you get some cool cards and you can flesh all that out in the long term. But the campaign mode just kind of feels like, how do we make a campaign mode for this? Oh, this is the simplest thing to do, and here you go. Now you've got the legacy campaign games, which we really enjoyed, and I think that's why Aeon's End stood out so much for you. It was our first legacy game. And you had a real hard time writing on the cards.
Not so hard anymore.
No, especially when you can get reset packs, or games now come with their own reset packs. So like, hey, don't worry, if you want to play the game as a standalone, here are the cards that you need, and you can keep all the cards that you marked up to play your super powered versions when you want.
I think the hardest one was when it actually said tear the card. And I was like, I have to destroy a card?
That's always hard the first time. Now, there are other games that kind of fall into a campaign, like you said, like Cthulhu Death May Die. One that we haven't played in a very long time, but we had a fair bit of fun with. I'd like to get back to the table, is the Hellboy board game, which isn't a campaign game, nothing carries over, but it's a scenario-based game, and it does go through the stories of the comic. So if you're a fan of Hellboy, you know the story from the beginning to the end. You're going to play through a fair bit of that going through the game. So you do have, this progressing story throughout the game, which is almost like a campaign, but you don't really follow it that way, and you don't get any carryover. And one thing that is new that we haven't dove into enough, but I'm eager to really play it more, especially the campaign mode, is Massive Darkness 2. And we had a lot of fun with the game. The mechanics, the fact that it's got a progressive story in one-off scenarios is awesome. Plus, you've got the Heavens Fall thing, which turns the whole thing into a campaign game. We've got the stuff from Massive Darkness 1 that turns that into a whole different campaign mode. So I think that's a really cool way to do the game. Be like, hey, you can just pick it up and play whenever you want. You got a progressive story, so you can play with your friends, go through the whole thing, or you can get the campaign modes out and take it to another level. Zombicide did that very well as well.
Didn't really feel like a campaign game, but yeah, I get it.
Well, in terms of not second edition, more Washington's DC, that's a campaign mode, and then lets you turn the other scenarios into a campaign mode. Mm-hmm. So we do have those aspects, but lots of different things in a campaign. I'd love to hear your thoughts from our viewers as what you like in campaign games. What are some of your favorites? You should definitely let us know down below in the comments. I think we've talked probably a little bit enough about campaign games. We've been a little bit all over the place. This is a conversational style show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And we need to definitely get some consensus. And what is your favorite type of campaign game? Because we had that debate at the beginning. We said you're like, it's Aeon's End, and I said no. But what are your favorite things? My favorite things, and then let's kind of give our channel overall. This is the campaign game for Dice and Dragons.
Well, I think there is a clear winner. I mean, we would be kind of hypocritical because it's been a number one on a lot of our top 10, and it just stays there all the time. But I think I said it. I think a good story and the fact that there's a progression in the characters and that there's actually an impact to the decisions that you make. So for that, to me, like I said, the Lord of the Rings game is really the one that's
takes the cake.
Yeah.
I think Descent Legends of the Dark is close, and then also Folklore the Affliction is very high in terms of the actual campaign games that those things take effect. Now we've got some that we haven't played yet. Also, Tainted Grail, your decisions matter a lot, and that's from what we've played of the game. We were marking off different things that we have to do, and if you miss something, you can't necessarily go back to it. So decision making is a big aspect of that game as well. I'd say the second element, besides just the progression carryover, is the mechanics of the campaign itself. For example, like we mentioned with Aeon's End, the way that you progress through the game is just so fun and so great that even if it doesn't have the branching story elements, and as I said, story, which we've enjoyed, so it's a good story, it makes the game really fun and kind of masks the fact that you're not really going to have a lot of agency over the choice in the story. And that means a lot to us because we loved Legacy of Dragonhold. That was probably one of our favorite games. And oh boy, finishing that and losing our agency at the end made the game go wah, wah, wah at the end. It went from here to that's just an okay game. So there you have it. Decisions, agency, and awesome progression, and the way that it progresses is the key to a game for Dice and Dragons. And our number one is Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. I also think the one thing we should mention, because I think the Sin Legends of the Dark might have had a chance to beat it, but length of mission matters. And Legends of the Dark is long. 3 hours is pushing it. 2 PlayStations for a single mission is pretty tough, and that's coming from someone that has a game table to leave it set up in. So I think that's another thing to really consider.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, the Lord of the Rings fell at about 60 minutes, 65 minutes. I think we got 1 or
90. There was a couple 2-hour ones, but it was more between 60 to 90.
Yeah.
Which meant it was one play session or something carried over. Little guy would be, we'd drop off the little guy and we'd be like, we got 15 minutes, we'd wrap it up and be good to go.
So on that note, I think it's time to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified when we have new content for you.
And take a look down below in the video description. You'll find links to all of our social media feeds: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you'd like to see some pictures of Julie and I playing campaign games and playing Call to Adventure Epic Origins, gotta get those up on the feeds, but they will definitely be there. By the time this video comes out, make sure to check them out. And then popping up in front of us are going to be links to some of our previously released videos. In front of me will be our most recent release, and since it took the top spot, you'll have a review of one of our many videos on the Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth, either the most recent campaign or our first ever video on it. On that note, we're now going to
grab our drink
and grab our best friend and fellow adventurer, because we've been on a lot of adventures together, and we remind you to keep playing games.